I'm so excited for today's video because we are literally halfway through the year. We are about to start the second half of the year and I'm very excited for how the rest of this year is going to turn out. Welcome to my July monthly reset slash plan with me. I never really know what to call these because yeah, I am technically resetting, but some people's resets are a little bit different than others. For me, resets involve just like revisiting my goals and seeing which goals I want to work on in the month. But I thought today's video would also be a good opportunity for me to revisit some of my yearly goals and see which ones that I decided to keep for the rest of the year. So we're gonna go over that first, and then after that we're gonna reflect on some of my goals for June and how I did with those. After that, I wanted to talk about my July goals, what they are, how I plan to achieve them, and then finally we usually end off these videos with me talking about all of the books that I read in June. Totally forgot to mention this in my intro, which is why I'm filming this later on, but if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Janelle. I am 30 years old and I'm an engineer here in SoCal. I really love goal setting, so I usually make these kinds of videos once a month. I also really like vlogging when I'm working on these goals, so I'll do a week in my life, like, you know, focusing on a couple of goals or whatever. And I also really like making casual vlogs as well, not necessarily like goal setting or goal achieving kinds of vlogs, but you know, goals for memory's sake. So if you're really into lifestyle kind of content, then you've definitely come to the right place. All of this goal setting and planning that I do, I usually do it in Notion, and I personally made all of the Notion pages that you'll be seeing in a bit, and I'll be leaving the links to the templates in the description, so definitely go check those out. But without further ado, let's just get into the mid-year reset, reflection, whatever. So here's my 2024 goals page. This is within my 2024 yearly template, which is actually a paid template. I do have a free template for my monthly page, which you can also go check out. But yeah, this one is a paid template. But let's go over the goals that I decided to keep for the rest of the year. And by the way, I did talk more in depth about some of my goals in a recent video that I did. I forgot what I titled it, honestly, but I'll just like leave the thumbnail on the screen and have a link up here and in the description. But anyways, yeah, I've reduced about 5 goals. So now I only have 17 goals to achieve by the end of the year. Currently, I've achieved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals, so I think we're doing pretty good. Some of these goals are also goals that I'll probably just evaluate at the end of the year. It's not something that I'm really tracking the progress of. Like for example, prioritize self-care. This is not something that I'm tracking. It's something that I'll probably ask myself at the end of the year, like, did I prioritize self-care in this year? And I'll decide at the end of the year whether or not I did that. So yeah. Other habits like reading 50 books, obviously that's something that I'm gonna be able to track. And then other stuff like learn Portuguese, that's gonna be a little bit harder to track. Like it's not gonna be like a yes or no kind of thing whether or not I learned Portuguese. I probably should have defined this a little bit better, but as of right now, it's just learn Portuguese. And speaking of which, let's kind of go over some of the goals that I haven't achieved and see kind of where I'm at with them. For learning Portuguese, I've been really consistent with this app called Babbel, which I'll kind of go over in my June goals because I did make it a goal to like be consistent with that. But yeah, with that app, I feel like I'm really learning a lot of vocabulary with it. The only issue is that I'm not doing really much of talking. I guess I could talk with my boyfriend, but our conversations might not be as structured as like a learning environment in maybe a classroom. So I kind of have to figure out before the end of this year how I'm gonna be able to like talk in a structured way. Maybe consider taking a class, maybe just like have italki conversations with a tutor or something like that. But yeah, by the end of this year, maybe I will try and talk to somebody or like consider adding speaking and conversating with people as like another thing to do with Portuguese, because that's like super important. So I definitely have to do that in like the upcoming months, maybe not this month, but in upcoming months. I'm kind of psyched out about this goal because, you know, talking makes me nervous, but I just have to come out of my shell with that. Declutter the entire apartment. I have started doing this last month, and don't let the progress percentage sway you to think that I am making a lot of progress with this. This is only like however many monthly goals that I have implemented right now. Like in the future, I'm gonna add more monthly goals and the percentage is probably gonna go down. But anyway, yeah, I started last month and I'm gonna be continuing on this goal in this month, which I'll talk about later, obviously. I'm still really overwhelmed with doing this task, to be honest, but in the little progress that I've made, I feel a little bit more confident in doing this and, you know, adding more little goals to this big goal. For build an emergency fund, I actually have been saving a little bit money, but I haven't been putting it away per se. Like, I don't have like a separate savings fund or whatever, which is so bad, honestly. But this month I really need to decide like where I'm gonna save my money and also how much I want to save. Like, I need to do the calculations or whatever, I don't know, to decide how much is a good amount of money to have in a savings, like, or like an emergency fund. Not necessarily a savings account, but like, you know, an emergency fund where I can use it whenever I really need it. So I need to decide where I'm gonna save my money and how much I'm gonna save. Read 50 books. I have been doing really good on this. I was a little bit behind last month, but I ended up catching up this month. So I'm really happy about that. Reading / unhaul all unread books. I've decided that I actually want to read the books, or like the books that I count towards this goal are books that I've read, and I don't want to count unread books to this. So I actually want to change this to read unread books, and I want to keep this at 20. It's actually 20 books that I want to read before the end of the year. It's kind of a long story why I had this as a goal, but basically I just have like a ton of books that are on my bookshelf that I haven't read. Physical books, by the way, not like books on my Kindle or whatever, but physical books. I want to read a lot of those by the end of the year. I think 20 is a reasonable amount of books to get through that are sitting on my bookshelf right now. So right now I am at 3 books. So yeah, I've read 3 books that are on my bookshelf so far, which is actually kind of bad. Like, I'm a little bit behind on this. So starting right now, I definitely need to pick up the pace on reading my unread books. Next is prioritize self-care. Like I said, this is not something that I'm really tracking, but it's something that I'm gonna ask myself at the end of the year. But I really do feel like I have been prioritizing my self-care. If you watch any of my previous videos, I've been talking about how I go in the sauna after the gym. Honestly, I feel like that's like a huge form of self-care. I also take my Kindle into the sauna, which is so bad. I know it's so bad, like for the Kindle and the battery and everything, but I find it so relaxing to bring my Kindle into the sauna and just read for like 20 minutes. It just feels so nice. And also my gym has these like eucalyptus towels. They're like these wet towels that are like infused with eucalyptus or whatever. They just smell so good. I just love going in the sauna and, you know, making this thing for me. I've also been trying to do face masks at least once a week, or once every other week maybe. Doing a face mask seems like such a little thing, but whenever I do it, I just feel so much better about myself. I don't know why. And then also another thing too that I feel like I've been doing to prioritize my self-care is actually setting boundaries with other people. Like actually saying no to other people, or saying to them like, oh, actually I really need to clean the house. Like, that's something that I want to do this weekend instead of like hanging out, because I do feel really anxious if I don't spend time to clean the house, or if I don't have like a little day to myself where I'm like preparing for the week ahead or whatever. I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but yeah, I don't like to pack my weekends with hanging out with too many people. I'd like to have at least one day where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna clean the house, or I'm gonna edit my video, or just like, you know, stay home all day. So yeah, that is another way that I've been prioritizing my self-care. Digital declutter. This is not something that I have been doing, but it's definitely something that I need to do. I take so many pictures and videos on my phone. I think I have like 11,000 pictures. It might be more than that, honestly. Yeah, it's 11,508 photos and videos in my camera roll. So I definitely need to go through that somehow. That is like so much, honestly. But I definitely need to go through my photos and videos, even if it's little by little, like maybe like 10 photos a day or something like that. I don't know. 10K subscribers on YouTube. This is not something that I seriously think that I will achieve by the end of the year, but I thought I would have it in here just in case. Like, you never know. And all of the milestones that I have in here is like by 500. So the next milestone would be 2K subs. And right now I'm at 1,600. So that's where we're at with that. And then spend more time with friends and family. This is not something that I've really been prioritizing, but I know that it's so important because I personally have a really good support system, and I'm so thankful for all my friends and family. But me as like an ADHD person, I feel like I'm not very good at maintaining communication with them. So having this goal in here definitely reminds me that I need to make this more of a priority. But yeah, we'll definitely need to revisit this in like the upcoming month or so. And then finally, show more appreciation for Alex. This is another thing where I'm kind of gonna evaluate at the end of the year whether or not I did this, but I honestly feel like I have. I've recently just organize the spice cabinet for him because he's the one who cooks. I've also been trying to wash the dishes more often, like at least every night, do a little bit of the dishes even if I don't finish them all. It's like way less dishes and way less overwhelmed for him for when he's cooking. So yeah, definitely have been trying my best to show more appreciation for him. And when I wrote this too, I didn't have a job, so keep that in mind. Like honestly, I did not expect to, well, I wanted to get a job. Not that I didn't expect to get a job, but like at the time of writing this, I just didn't expect that I would have to dedicate a lot of time to my job. So like, yeah, I am definitely doing little things to show more appreciation for him, but at the same time, I can't really fault myself if I don't, because I didn't expect to be obligating so much of my time to my job. So those are my 2024 yearly goals as of right now. I really appreciate anyone who has stuck with me since the beginning of this year. I'm so excited to work on these goals in the upcoming months, but let's get into my June reflection. So here's my page for June. I actually don't have a specific template for this, but I do have a generic monthly template that looks very similar to this, which you can get in the description. It is completely free. So yeah, definitely check that out. But let's get into my monthly goals for June. So my first monthly goal was to declutter 4 drawers. And I did end up decluttering 3 drawers this month. I ended up decluttering 2 drawers in the desk, which I actually filmed. I can't remember which vlog I filmed it in, but I filmed that. And then like I said, I organized the spice cabinet for my boyfriend Alex. So that was technically the 3rd drawer. I'm very happy with how the spice cabinet turned out. And I also turned one of the drawers in the desk into like a nail drawer. Like all of my nail supplies will be in there. So I'm really happy that I was able to declutter at least 3 of them. And honestly, I'm very proud of myself for getting started on my decluttering journey. Like this seemed like such a huge task for me, and it honestly still seems like a huge task for me, but just getting started on it is like such a huge deal for me. Next goal that I have in here is to create a meal plan with Alex. I actually had this as one of my yearly goals, but I decided not to keep it as a yearly goal because I felt like this was not the best way to assist my boyfriend Alex with cooking. I did some further reflection on whether or not a meal plan would actually help him, and I decided that it wasn't. Like, I don't think he struggles with deciding what to make in a week, but I did notice that sometimes he'll come home a little bit tired, so I figured what would be more helpful for him is if I just kept the kitchen clean, or at least like relatively clean, as clean as I personally can get it, honestly, because I feel like most of the reason why he doesn't want to cook is because he's tired, and then he comes home and sees that the kitchen is still dirty from the previous night, and like, who wants to cook in a dirty kitchen? So what would be more helpful for him to continue cooking is to just wash the dishes and keep the kitchen as clean as I can get it. Next goal that I had on here was 65% on my Portuguese habit. If you're new here, I have a habit tracker down here that tracks my habit completion rate, and I wanted to get at least 65% on this habit completion rate, which I did end up doing. And then finally, the last goal, which I actually didn't have in here because it's one of my yearly goals, it's a part of that. So this contributed to my read my unread books off of my bookshelf goal that I had. I ended up reading 2 books, which obviously I'll go over later, but I did achieve this goal, and I'm really happy that I did, because that goal is very slow going, to be honest. Let's quickly go over my habit tracker because I've already talked about one habit. So yeah, as you know, Portuguese, I got 70% on this one, so I achieved my goal on here. But the rest of these habits, I actually didn't have a goal for them. I just kind of wanted to track them. So for journaling, I got 46.7%. That's not my best, but in the next month, hopefully I do better. Reading, I actually did 80%. So I really took advantage of listening to audiobooks this month, and that definitely contributed to me reading a lot this month. And then YouTube, 56.7%. Honestly, I feel like I've been doing pretty good on like staying consistent with my YouTube videos, even if some of them come out a day or 2 late. So I'm really happy with how consistent I've been doing on YouTube, especially considering that I have a job. And then finally, let's do a little bit of reflection on the month of June. So firstly, things that work for me. Listening to audiobooks and switching between books. I have been reading multiple books at the same time, and I think that switching between books helps me to not get tired of them so fast. I found that whenever I went into my reading slump, there were books that I just like didn't want to open back up and listen to on my drive to work. So yeah, switching between books and listening to audiobooks really helped me to get through and catch up with my reading goal this month. Putting audiobooks on hold on Libby. I never put books on hold because whenever they became available, I'm like, I'm not in the mood to read this. So I just stopped putting books on hold, and this month I really started to put them back on hold because I was like, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of like reading books that aren't popular or reading books that I'm not like, you know, excited to read, that are just available. Blocking social media apps after work. This has really helped me to stay on top of my Portuguese goal. So every time my apps got blocked, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's time for me to start doing my Portuguese habit. So that helped a lot. And it also helped a lot with my YouTube habit as well. Like if I wasn't stuck on my phone for the rest of the afternoon, that would give me enough time to work on my YouTube videos a little bit during the week. And then finally, being accepting of my non-productive days. This is kind of a given. Like, you know, I can't be productive every single day, and I have to be okay with the days that I'm not productive so that I'm more productive in the future. That's helpful for me because when I'm nicer to myself, I'm more inclined to do more productive things later on. Things that didn't work for me: not making enough time for my nightly routine. I feel like I haven't been sleeping enough lately, and that has been really affecting my mood in the last few weeks. Whenever I wouldn't sleep enough, I would just get so angry at very little things, and that's not helpful for me at all. So I definitely need to make more time in the evening for my night routine so that I'm not like going into my sleeping time and then not sleeping enough. I just kind of reiterated the same thing twice, so let me just delete that. How I can improve next month: keep reading stuff I enjoy. This is pretty obvious. Like, I just want to keep reading stuff that I enjoy to not put myself back into a reading slump. Add reminders for some goals. So I guess I kind of like touched on it earlier when I was talking about my 2024 goals, but there are some goals that I honestly forget that I have as a goal. So I think I should put some reminders in my phone to like declutter some photos from my phone, or I don't know, like try and call somebody that I've been forgetting about. I don't know. But yeah, definitely need to add some reminders for some of my goals, and then figure out how to allow more time for my night routine. This is just reiterating what I said earlier about not having enough time in my night routine and not sleeping enough. And then a last thing to reflect on is things that I'm proud of myself for. Catching up on my reading goal. I read so many books this month, and that allowed me to catch up on my reading goal. So I'm super proud of myself for that. Staying consistent with my Portuguese habit. I'm very proud of myself for this because I honestly didn't think that I would achieve this goal. Not that I didn't think that I would achieve it, but I just thought that this goal was kind of hard for me. So I'm really happy that I achieved it. I'm also proud of myself for trying other machines at the gym. For those of you who are new here, I recently started a fitness habit, but I've mostly been doing cardio. So I've mostly been doing the stationary bike. I recently just got into the Stairmaster, but it's all been cardio stuff. So I kind of like started to get into some of the other workout machines, like definitely the weight machines. So I'm kind of proud of myself for coming out of my comfort zone a little bit and trying some new machines at the gym. And then finally, I'm proud of myself for decluttering a few drawers. I've said this like 3 times already, but decluttering is such a huge task for me, and I'm just really proud of myself for at least getting started on this goal. So yeah, that's how June went for me. I feel like I did pretty good in the month of June. I'm really excited for how July went, but I'm gonna move into the bedroom and we'll go over my July goals in there. Okay, so we made it to the July setup portion of this video, and I've moved into my bedroom because this is actually the best lighting situation in my entire apartment after the sun goes down. So we're in here for the rest of the video basically. But yeah, let's get into it. So here's how my July monthly setup looks like. I kind of went with this retro anime theme. Don't ask me why I decided to go with this theme. It's not as summery as I expected it to be, but honestly I really like it. I'm a huge fan of like muted colors. I'm not really a huge fan of bright colors, so this is a really nice theme for me personally. Also, I've gotten really big into collecting CDs. At my work we actually have a CD player, so I've kind of started my own collection of CDs, so now I'm really happy to start going to record stores and actually buying CDs from record stores. Honestly, I feel like such a cool person going into a record store and actually buying stuff from there. But yeah, I'm like super into CDs right now. But anyways, the first thing that we see is the quote of the month, which actually I didn't end up getting a quote for last month, but this month it is taking care of yourself is productive. I tend to get into like this really bad mindset of like always wanting to be productive. So I think that I really need to incorporate this mindset in the month of July, or, you know, moving forward in the rest of the year, because yeah, I really do need to take care of myself so that I can be more productive in the future. Not that the whole goal is for me to be more productive, but I feel like I am more productive when I take care of myself. So yeah, I definitely need to keep this in mind. For anyone who's not new, the to-do list comes from my monthly goals. So everything that is inside my to-do list is like a part of my monthly goals. So let's go over my monthly goals. First one is make emergency fund decisions. So like I said earlier in my, 2024 yearly goals reflection portion of this video, I really need to make some decisions. The two biggest ones is where am I going to save my money and how much money am I going to save? So I have that inside of this goal. Those are the only two that I have in here so far, but maybe later I'll add more. Next is 70% on Portuguese. I really want to maintain my goal of doing Portuguese almost every day. Not almost every day, but like enough days out of the month where it's 70%. I wanted to do a little bit better, but not too much better to where I'm like overwhelming myself with the percentage. Like I feel like if I went to 75%, I feel like that's too much. I honestly haven't actually counted the days that would amount to, but I don't know. I don't want to like psych myself out with getting this huge goal. And then the next goal that I have is declutter big objects. So last month I did declutter at least 4 drawers. This month I really want to focus on the big objects in my apartment. There's a bunch of like really huge things, like for example, we had a workout bench, and you'll notice here that I already have some of it done because I actually got rid of some of the stuff today. But we had a workout bench, we had an old vacuum, we have an old luggage, an old hamper, like a bunch of these stuff that is like cluttering up the space. And if I just got rid of these items, it would free up so much space and it would just make our apartment just like way more open. Also, I'm not sure if we're gonna have company over in the upcoming week, so I really wanted to get rid of some of that stuff so that, like, just in case if somebody wanted to stay over, like Alex's brother is coming to visit, he might stay over at his mom's house, he might stay here, so I don't want to take the chance and like have all of this stuff color our apartment, and I just don't like having people over when our house is messy and dirty. So yeah, let's actually open this up and see all of the stuff that I put on here. So yeah, I have the suitcase, the old hamper, we have a trunk organizer. It's like this bin that goes inside a trunk. I need to put that in my car. It's been sitting there literally for months, so yeah, definitely need to put that in my car. Clothes to donate. We have like a bunch of clothes set aside that we had been meaning to donate, but they've just been sitting there for months. Cat carriers, we have a couple of cat carriers. They're not like the solid ones, like the solid plastic ones. They're like the ones that you can like fold. They're like fabric, and I don't think these are very good cat carriers for us anymore, so we need to get rid of those. Exercise bench and old vacuum. I literally just got rid of these, so I was able to check these off today actually. So yeah, that is my declutter big objects goal. And then actually I have another goal in here, which I honestly should put in here, like add a new card in here. But my last goal is to read a couple of books that are on my bookshelf. I've already talked about this, but yeah, reading 3 books this time instead of 2. And I think if I read at least 3 books in the next 6 months up until the end of the year, I will have achieved my goal of reading at least 20 books that are on my bookshelf. So I think 3 for the next few months should do it. So yeah, those are my 4 big monthly goals for the month of July. Now let's get into my habit tracker. And for this month, I really wanted to continue tracking journaling, Portuguese, obviously, that's my goal. Decluttering, so this is not technically my declutter big objects goal, but I just kind of wanted to track how much I declutter in the month. And then lastly is YouTube. I just want to continue tracking this for no other reason than to see how how far I can get on it. So yeah, those are my habits for the month of July. Have I been saying June or July in the past few sentences? I can't remember. But anyways, that is how July is all set up for. Like I said, I do have a generic monthly template which is free, which you can check out in the description. And yeah, let's see how far I can get with my monthly goals. One last thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention in my June reflection is that I'm not like super big into making sure that I actually achieve my goals. If I make some good progress on my goals, I'm happy. Like honestly, the biggest thing that I struggle with is getting started on stuff. So the fact that I actually make some progress on all of my goals like is good enough for me. I'm already proud of myself for that. So I've always been the type of person, or at least like whenever I started like the goal setting videos on my channel, I've been that type of person that's like always been appreciative of the progress that I've made, and I've tried to highlight that in every single video as well. So yeah, I forgot to mention that in my June reflection. Like you saw that I only decluttered 3 drawers instead of 4 drawers, and for me that's like really good. Honestly, making progress on anything, especially when it comes to something that's super daunting for me, I'm just like over the moon with pride in myself for even getting started on it. So yeah, so I think that's been really helpful for me in being able to continue on with my goals, like never being discouraging to myself or pushing myself too hard to achieve my goals has really helped me so much in the past few months, or at least, you know, ever since I started with these goal setting videos. So yeah, if you're the type of person that struggles with like achieving your goals, maybe just like, you know, be kinder to yourself and appreciate how much progress that you make. That's usually my whole spiel every time I make these videos, and I've honestly forgotten, I think I've forgotten in the past few months to mention that, but it's something that a lot of people have really appreciated that I mentioned, so I thought I would bring it up again. And in case you haven't seen it yet, this is my homepage for my yearly template. I love this. I'm looking for ways to improve this yearly template in the upcoming year, in 2025, honestly. It took me a long time to make this, so I'm giving myself a lot more time to make the next one since I have a job now. Last year when I made this one, I did not have a job, so I could contribute all of my time to making it, which I did, and honestly, this has been so helpful for me, and it's been helpful for a lot of people. But anyways, if I scroll down, you can see the current month's goals, and right now it's June 30th, so it's still showing the previous month's goals. But yeah, whenever it rolls over into tomorrow, it's gonna show the goals that I just talked about. So yeah, that's my July setup. I've actually filmed this video already like a couple days ago. This is my second time filming this, and since I'm filming this for a second time, I kind of like revisited my goals a little bit and thought about like whether or not they're actually good goals that would contribute to my yearly goals, and I think that they're pretty good goals, especially since one of them I'm actually getting started with, because you know I've kind of avoided it for the past 6 months, but yeah, at least I'm getting started on it. So now that that's over with, let's just get into the books that I read in June. Last but not least, let's get into the books that I read in June. I'm so excited to share with you all the books that I read and my thoughts on them, because I read so much and I'm happy to be caught up on my Goodreads reading goal. I keep saying that I'm like really happy that I'm caught up, because last year I got behind and I didn't end up catching up and I didn't meet my reading goal. So this year I am determined to meet/exceed my reading goal, because yeah, it didn't end as good last year and this is how it started. So I ended up reading 7 books this month. Most of them were audiobooks because, as you all know, I have a pretty long commute, so I listened to a bunch of audiobooks. And honestly, some of these books are a little bit lesser known, I would say. They're definitely books that I hadn't even heard of until I saw them in Libby and became very interested in them. Like I read the plot and I was like, ooh, this seems pretty cool. So I ended up, you know, checking it out because I thought it was cool in the moment. So I thought that was interesting. They're not books that I was like, you know, they were on my want to read or like my TBR or whatever. So I thought that was interesting. But anyways, the first book that I read in the month of June was Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. This book is about a millennial woman who works in a tech startup, which also has a very toxic work environment. And she's kind of like stuck between this whole whole world where like all of her bosses are super rich and wealthy, while whenever she goes out or, you know, right outside of her apartment, she sees homeless people and, you know, extreme poverty and stuff. There's like a little bit of a fantastical element in it too, where she has like this black hole that's following her around everywhere, and the size of the black hole is determined by how much anxiety and depression that she's experiencing. So if she's ever put in a situation which makes her more anxious or sad, the black hole increases. And if she's like hanging out with her friends, the black hole will get smaller and smaller. So yeah, it's determined by that. And I obviously found this to be a very interesting concept for a book. For anyone who's new here, I'm also a millennial woman who works in the tech world. I'm a software engineer too. So this was like, this directly applied to me. So obviously I was drawn to this book and I wanted to see what themes that this book explored. But unfortunately, I don't think that it really hit that hard for me. I think I have the extreme privilege of working in an environment which allows me to thrive. So maybe for somebody who is a little bit more disillusioned in their job, this might be more suited for them. But I guess the problem for me with this book was that I couldn't get really attached to the main character. Definitely don't read this book if you're having like an existential crisis about living in a post-capitalistic society. Don't do that. But for me, being in like a good place to be able to read this book, I think it was okay. It would be definitely better for somebody who is a little bit more disillusioned with, you know, the society that we live in right now. So yeah. Wow. I rated this a 2.5 stars. Next book that I read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. I finally read this book after like how many videos of me mentioning that I am currently reading this book. It literally took me so long to get through this book, and I think that's important to note, honestly, because now that I'm reading Heir of Fire, which is the third book? I don't remember what book I'm on. For reference, this is the prequel to the Throne of Glass series. So currently I'm on Heir of Fire, and now that I'm reading Heir of Fire, I realize how lacking The Assassin's Blade is, if that makes sense. So at the time of reading The Assassin's Blade, I did end up rating it a 4-star. I'm just happy to be reading more about Selena. I think I did get to know her a little bit better, and like this kind of solidified her character, her as a character. So I'm really happy to have read this book because of that. And I personally feel a lot more connected to Selena after reading this book for sure, because I don't know, I just relate to her on so many levels. Like the things that she does like screams huge Leo energy, and I've been saying this before, but yeah, I relate to her so much. So yeah, like reading this book, I was just enjoying reading this book just because I really like the main character already. For people who maybe aren't as into Selena as a character, maybe you wouldn't enjoy this as much. So yeah, I think that's really important to note as far as this goes. I've actually been contemplating whether or not I should have read this one first instead of third in the series, because everybody like kind of argues about the order of the series. But now that I'm reading Heir of Fire, there are some stuff that was mentioned in Assassin's Blade, so I don't know if I would have, like if I had read Assassin's Blade first, like I have remembered some of the stuff that happened in Assassin's Blade that ends up happening in, or ends up being revisited in Heir of Fire. So I don't know, like the only way that I would know that is if I read them all again for the first time, which is literally impossible. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, rated that a 4-star. And then the next book that I read was Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I noticed that this was available on Libby, and I'm pretty sure this was one of the books that I had added to my want to read list on Goodreads. So I was really excited to find it available on Libby, but at the same time I wasn't really ready to read a book like this. So what had happened was I was in the middle of Crave by Tracy Wolff and Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, and I was listening to those two books on Spotify Premium, but unfortunately there's a limit on the listening hours on Spotify, and those two books I reached my limit basically, and I couldn't continue listening to those books. So I had to find another book at the last second, and this was the book that I ended up reading. So yeah, going into it, I wasn't fully prepared to read a book like this. It's kind of a no plot, just vibes kind of book, and it's very depressing. I don't recommend reading this if you're in a place where you're kind of depressed or like having this existential crisis. I don't recommend this if you are suffering from an ED as well. I feel like I should give out more of these warnings whenever I talk about these books as well. But yeah, definitely do not consider reading this if you're suffering from an ED. But it's basically about a vampire that is struggling to fit in with like normal human society, but is finding it difficult because we as humans center our entire lives around food. And this isn't something that I realized until after I read this book. Like reading this book, I was like, oh damn, like we really do like center everything around food. Like everything is about eating and food and, you know, what you're eating, how much you're eating, just like all of that stuff. And this book like definitely like puts the emphasis on eating. It also talks a lot about art, and I feel like this book in itself is kind of like a work of art. I'm not gonna say it's like the Mona Lisa or something, but I think it's a pretty good book that explores some really important themes. I love that this was a very unique way to explore the vampire theme. And keep in mind too, one of my hyperfixations is vampire stories, so I'm pretty obsessed with reading any and every kind of vampire book. Usually I tend to gravitate toward the more like gothic kinds of vampire books, so like anything that's like, you know, lighthearted romance vampire books is like not something that I'm super big on. But yeah, this is definitely up my alley. I love the classic types of vampire books, but I also love vampire books like this that kind of like have a unique twist on it. Like this one was super focused on food, and I love that about it. I personally, like my boyfriend and I love going out to eat and, you know, checking out new food places, and yeah, this was definitely something that I really enjoyed reading. I'm also a huge fan of art, so all of the stuff and talking about art in this book like made me really happy, very satisfying for me. But yeah, I think that a lot of people get this book kind of twisted. It's honestly a no plot, just vibes kind of book, so don't go into it thinking that there's like this huge big story that's gonna happen. It's really more character driven. So yeah, I really like this book. I rated it a 4 stars. Next book that I read is different from all the other ones. It's the only contemporary book that I've read this month. Honestly, I am not super into contemporary books anymore. Like I'm fully blown into my fantasy era, but since it's Pride, it was a good opportunity for me to read this book. Not that I thought of reading this book since it was Pride. I actually started reading this book and then realized that it was Pride, so I was like, oh yeah, I might as well keep going with this book because it's Pride. But anyways, I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Oh my god, I'm so happy to have read this book finally. I got this book when it came out in 2022, and I was so excited to read it when I got it. But for some reason, I've been putting off reading it. I think I have this thing where I just don't want things to be over. So when I get a book, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to read it, but I don't want it to be over, so I'm not gonna read it right now. And that's what happened with this book. But anyways, it's like basically about Delilah, who is pictured here in all black. Her estranged sister invites her to photograph her wedding, and there she meets her sister's best friend, Claire, and things happen. They fall in love. That's what happens usually in these books. So I really like this book. Personally, I'm fangirling over Delilah, and I wish I could get more of Delilah. I know there's like 2 more books in like this series. Not series? Is it a series? I don't know. But I really hope that in the next couple of books there's still some Delilah in there, because I'm digging Delilah. So yeah, I rated this I think I rated this a 4 star, did I? Yeah, rated this a 4 star. And also that was the first book that I read off of my bookshelf, so finally got that out of the way. Next book that I read was another book off of my bookshelf, and that was Legend Born by Tracy Dion. First of all, look at this cover. Like, how gorgeous is this cover? I don't know why I put off reading this book for so long, but it's probably the same reason why I put off reading this one, Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I just don't want it to be over, but this is also a series, so I'm gonna definitely continue reading this series. So basically this book is about Bree, whose mother recently died in a car accident, and shortly afterwards she goes to an early college program. She's actually 16 years old, going to an early college program where she stays in the dorm and takes college classes, and there she actually witnesses like a demon attack, which she actually wasn't supposed to see. Like, normal people cannot see these demons, and because of that, she kind of gets sucked into this secret society, and it's basically this group of students who hunt these demons down and kill them. I did not know this going into this book, but it's actually like not a retelling, but like it's a twist on the King Arthur legend. If anyone has heard of that, it's the one where, like, you know, the sword and the stone, and Excalibur, I think, is the name of the sword. I should know that because I just read this. But yeah, it's like that whole legend, and I did not know that going into this. So when I started reading about like King Arthur and all of this stuff with Excalibur, I was kind of like, you know, a little bit turned off by that because I'm not too familiar with it. I'm not 100% interested in that sort of legend, but I kept going, and I'm so glad I finished because honestly, this turned out to be like one of the best books that I've read so far this year. And I want to say too that this is a young adult novel. I'm not the target audience for this, but it definitely gets into some really, really good themes. One of the biggest themes in this book is like the effect that slavery had on Black people in future generations. So in this book, she like will sometimes go back and talk to her ancestors, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but that like literally plays a huge role in this book. And I think that using that theme to empower slash highlight like an issue that still continues to affect Americans today, so creative, and I'm literally blown away by how this book explored that theme. Honestly, 5 stars. And I know that at least in recent months I haven't been dishing out that many 5-star reviews, but this is definitely one of them. Next book that I read was House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This is a book about a young woman who lives in the slums of a city. I forgot what the city is called, but she's like living in poverty, and she gets this opportunity to work for a countess as a blood maid. And in this world, blood maids are basically young ladies that give up their blood to the nobles, and in exchange they get paid a lot, and also they pretty much have whatever they want. Like, they get fed really good because obviously these nobles want their blood to taste good and everything. So yeah, she essentially gets hired as a blood maid, basically to change her life completely. She gets hired by this countess and kind of like gets sucked into her world. She starts to fall for the countess, but things aren't what they seem in this book. The vibes of this book are very gothic horror, so if you're into that, you probably will really like this book. So this one's definitely right up my alley. Vampires, it's gothic, it's a horror book, sapphic as well. Unique plot. Like I said, I really love these unique plots in vampire stories. So everything in this book was elements that I really enjoyed, and unfortunately I did not like the way that it ended. But like, after reflecting on it, I know that it's probably supposed to end this way. Like, it's meant to be like this. It's a horror book. It's not going to end the way that you want it to, because, you know, horror books are those type of books that they're not obligated to be satisfying in the end. So for me personally, I wanted to like this book so bad. Like I said, it's got everything that I could ever want in a vampire book, but it just like didn't end the way that I wanted it to. Not that I feel like I'm better at deciding how a book should end, but like it just wasn't that satisfying for me. So I ended up rating this a 3 stars. Okay, the last book that I read finally is Crave by Tracy Wolff. So like I said, I started this book at the beginning of the month with my Spotify premium membership, which only has 15 hours for some reason. I got to about like 80% on this book before my Spotify listening hours ended, and then after that I had to wait for the hold on Libby to become available, which took a few weeks. Fortunately, it did end up becoming available before the end of the month, so I was able to finish it within this month. But I think by the time that I picked it back up again, I was just like so over it, because it is a little bit absurd, and I'll explain why. So this book is about a girl who basically gets orphaned, and her only other family is her uncle, who lives in Alaska because he's a headmaster of a boarding school. But what she finds out is that this is a boarding school for supernatural creatures. So vampires, werewolves, dragons, witches all go to this boarding school, and they try to hide it from her at the beginning, which is kind of weird because how do you expect an entire student body of high schoolers to hide this big secret from one person. So yeah, that is the basic plot of it. There's more stuff to it. Like there's like this whole mystery that's going on with her, and obviously there's a romance between her and a vampire. This gives off, like, this cover gives off huge Twilight vibes. Like, I don't know how you could make a cover like this and not get copyrighted by Twilight. Like, how's that possible? So that is the basic plot of this book, and if you couldn't already tell, this book has me a little bit irritated. I went into this book kind of thinking it was going to be like kind of like Twilight, where it's like cliche, you know. I was expecting that, but I didn't think it would be to the extent that it was. There were so many cliche things that happened in this book, but I was honestly questioning whether or not this book was satire. Like, did somebody seriously write this book? Did they write this book to parody Twilight and other teenage fantasy romance books? Not only that, there were so many things that happened that were just so over the top that I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, this is so dumb, honestly. And I know that sounds so mean to say. Like, I don't usually say this kinds of stuff about books, honestly, but this book, like, I was just like, did that really happen? Like, what? Like, I was literally just questioning whether or not, like, I was really reading a book. I actually ended up rating this a 3 stars, but it makes sense in my review on Goodreads. I literally said 4 stars if this is satire, because parts of it was honestly pretty funny for me to read. Like, I was actually kind of laughing at some parts, because half of me was like thinking that they didn't take this book seriously when they wrote it. But I said 4 stars if this is satire, 2 stars if not. So that's why I ended up rating it a 3 star. So yeah, that's what I thought of that book, and that actually ends off all of the books that I read in June. I read 7 books, 2 of which were the physical books off of my bookshelf, which I wanted to get through. So I'm very happy about that. I'm really happy that I was able to catch up on my Goodreads reading goal. This is very different from last month where I only read 2 books, but that was like coming out of my reading slump. So yeah. Currently I'm actually reading Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I already mentioned that I'm reading Air of Fire by Sarah J Maas. What else am I reading? I'm also reading Fake Dates and Mooncakes, I think the name of the book is called. I just saw it on Libby and I was like, oh, this seems cute, so I checked it out. I forgot who the name of the author is, but I'll leave the cover right here so you can see who it is. And yeah, so that should catch you up to everything that I'm reading and everything that I've just read. I really appreciate you joining me on this monthly reset. Like I said, this is my 2nd time filming it, so that's why it's like in the evening right now. I have a lot of fun checking in with you all and like showing you where my progress is at with my goals and my reading and all that stuff. I also really like reading all of your comments, like talking about some of my goals and, you know, just chatting with me. They don't necessarily have to be about anything, but I just really love chatting with you all. So yeah, if you had like any opinions on anything that I've just said in the past, I don't know, 30 minutes? Maybe even longer than that, honestly. Definitely let me know in the comments. And yeah, that is pretty much the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon.